I don't quote Shakespeare often, but I do now with a little bit of a twist. The fault, dear Brutus, is not just in our stars, but in ourselves. It's absolutely fair to question whether President Trump's overheated rhetoric, like calling Hillary Clinton evil, calling the media the enemy of the people, just two examples, is contributing to the environment where crazy, weak-minded individuals put words to action. And yes, Maxine Waters encouraging supporters to harass cabinet members, Eric Holder telling a crowd to kick them when they're down, should be condemned as well. But Donald Trump is the president of the United States with a bully pulpit like no other. So when you look at viewer comments on Facebook or Twitter, is it any surprise that too often they are crude and rude? Not exactly shining city on the hill kind of stuff. Joining us for more are Jack Brill, Vice Chair of the Sarasota Republican Party, and Kevin Griffith, the Vice Chair of the Sarasota Democratic Party. But first, tonight's poll question with ABC7 digital producer Chloe Comboy. Chloe.
Alan, today I posted your poll question asking viewers, should Republicans and Democrats elected to office show greater restraint in the rhetoric they use to describe political opponents and the news media? In just a few hours, we've had over 500 votes and 30 comments on our Facebook page. In just a few minutes, I'll share some of those comments with you and reveal what the final poll numbers are. Alan, back to you.
Chloe, thanks a lot. Our Facebook and our roundtable discussion in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back, and joining us for more are Jack Brill, the Vice Chair of the Sarasota Republican Party, and Kevin Griffith, the Vice Chair of the Sarasota Democratic Party. So, gentlemen, I set this up by asking whether the rhetoric from, whether it's the president or from Democrats, overheated at times, can have an impact on weak-minded people who take action like we saw this week. The president today seemed to set the right tone. Let's take a look.
I heard he was a person that preferred me over others, but I did not see that. There's no blame, there's no anything. If you look at what happened to Steve Scalise, that was from a supporter of a different party. You look at what happened on numerous of these incidents, they were supporters of others.
That he says that he bears no responsibility in terms of the rhetoric that's going on there. And I'm looking at our Facebook page, and I look at our Facebook page every single day, and you have people like Lawrence who say the bombings this week, Democratic setup. And then another guy, Timothy, says, who even cares about this story when there are thousands of people trying to storm our borders, which is debatable. Kevin?
Well, there's no moral equivalent between protesters and bombs. And I hear the president's rhetoric just now, but earlier today on Twitter, he called this bomb stuff and talked about how the Republicans were motivated until this bomb stuff happened. He's the president. He sets the tone. Whether he's Democrat or Republican, he sets the tone. And his tone right now is uncivil. It's been uncivil since he's been in the election and won the election. And it's for him to change the rhetoric so that his followers, especially on the fringe, both parties have people on the fringe, you're right, but the people at the top have to be responsible and have to be statesmanlike. And that's what we expect from any president, regardless of party, and it's not what we're getting.
Jack?
We're not getting it from anyone, both parties.
We get it from some people.
Yeah, but there can be cases on all sides that have taken this issue,
But there's one president of the United States.
And that is the president that we all elected. Do I, agree with what Rod Thompson said the other night? Do I wish he wouldn't, use Twitter as much, and tweet as much? Excuse me. That would be helpful. But, I just look at, having people chased out of the restaurants. Looking at, going from the Steve Scalise shooting, looking at this idiot down in Miami. I mean, how does anybody not see the side of his van and report him?
No one has a bully pulpit like the President of the United States. He sets the agenda. And, you solve problems one at a time. This is a problem that the President can speak to, starting with himself, in terms of how he talks about his political opponents. They're opponents. They're not enemies. They're not enemies of the American people.
I'm not disagreeing they're not enemies of the American people, but that's one of the values of having the freedom of speech is you get everyone having their own opinion.
Right, but
with their own opinion, you may not agree, and some of it may not be good.
Freedom of speech does not include yelling fire in a movie theater. So says the Supreme Court.
I don't think the president actually has, believe it or not, I hate to say this, but I don't think he has the maturity or the capability to control himself. And you know, you might roll your eyes, but I think deep down, Jack, you know that. He just doesn't have the ability, the self-discipline to do that, because he won. And in his view, he sees the world winners and losers. He doesn't see one group of Americans. And it's all about winning. And that's not good for our country. It might be good for his political party, but it's not good for our country.
All right, we have to take a quick pause. Our conversation on the pipe bomb threats continues. Welcome back. This week we are talking about the arrest of the bombing suspect who sent packages to former Presidents Obama and Clinton and Robert De Niro and CNN. And joining us for more are Jack Brill, the Vice Chair of the Sarasota Republican Party, Kevin Griffith of the Vice Chair of the Sarasota Democratic Party. But first, tonight's poll question with ABC 7 digital producer Chloe Conboy. Chloe.
Tons of comments on our Facebook poll. We asked our viewers, should Republicans and Democrats elected to office show greater restraint in the rhetoric they use to describe political opponents and the news media? Julie says, something called the First Amendment comes to mind. Michael responded to Julie and says, it has its limits. Inciting hatred is one of its limits. Coming up, I will show you the final poll results, and I saved some of the best comments for last. Alan?
Yeah, I can't wait to hear that, Chloe. Thank you very much. So, gentlemen, I mean, that's what we're talking about here. And let's put aside Trump and Maxine Waters and Eric Holder and talk about us, the Suncoast residents, one of whom writes on Facebook, Robert Lynn. Funny how the media, in quotes, portrays the fake bomb mailing as sent to Trump targets and try to spin it because Trump's rhetoric, yet they fail to mention that each and every one of these people have called Trump and his supporters racist, Nazis, and worse than Hitler. They could have easily said these fake bombs were sent to these people who have spewed hateful and divisive rhetoric. I wonder why they spin it the way that they do. Number one, I don't ever recall Barack Obama calling the president Hitler or Nazis or so forth. So, but the problem is we see these comments way too often right here, Suncoast residents talking about our politics, Jack, and nothing good could come of this.
And you see it on all sides. Here's we go back to the first freedom of speech. We all want it. We don't want it curtailed when it comes to us. Then we can say stupid things, so let me reiterate that obviously what happened this week should never happen to anybody. I hope they lock that person up forever, and it's probably too short of a time at that point. But it's a balance. And is the rhetoric gotten stronger since social media was introduced? Yes, because it's instantaneous. And actually, it's taken away the opportunity where before, if you were going to send something, you would reread it. If you wrote it, reread it and think about it, maybe cross it out. Or now, you plug in a 20-word tweet and it's gone.
Alan, I think it's important to remember that our local politicians, they are also our leaders. And I will give both parties, for the most part, some kudos. I think locally our politicians do a pretty good job. I know the city commissioners do a very good job. I know Representative Good has always done a very good job with this. And actually there's been some bipartisan town halls between Joe Gruters and Margaret Good. And so there is some leadership at the top that shows civility, and that's important.
Okay, we have to take another break. We are just getting warmed up. Our conversation on the pipe bomb threats will continue after a break. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Week in Politics, and joining us for more are Jack Brill, the Vice Chair of the Sarasota Republican Party, and Kevin Griffith, the Vice Chair of the Sarasota Democratic Party. But first, tonight's poll question with ABC 7 digital producer Chloe Conboy. Chloe.
Alan, here's some of the new comments added to our Facebook poll question. One of the comments was from Jill. Jill says, I think they should only be allowed to comment on their plans and achievements and nothing else. No negative campaign ads, ban all bashing of opponents. Leslie says, I would rather hear why I should vote for a candidate rather than why I shouldn't vote for the opponent. And the final results are in, and it looks like the yeses win by a landslide. 89% of you say Republicans and Democrats elected to office should show greater restraint in the rhetoric they use to describe political opponents and the news media. And 11% of you said no, they shouldn't. Be sure to look out for the next Facebook poll coming up next Friday on ABC 7 News at 7. Alan, back to you.
I want to talk to that 11%. I want to talk about state and local races, but I do understand the difficulty that candidates are in sometimes. And we all know that I ran for office a couple of years ago, and half the people gave me the advice, I don't want to hear about your opponent. I want to hear about what you're going to do. I don't want to hear anything negative. Then the other half of the people said, I want you to take it to him. I want you to, bang on why he should not, be in office and so forth. And frankly, that is the dilemma that many political candidates have, Kevin.
Sometimes people vote for you, and sometimes they vote against your opponent. And that's part of politics, and that's why you hear the rhetoric. I mean, if you think about Trump, he basically ran on an anti-Hillary platform of lock her up. And so I think you make a good point, and that's the issue.
But I got to say, we all agree it'd be great to have a fact-based, issue-based campaign. Those campaigns don't win. Negative campaigning wins elections, and it's been proven. And it's probably 88% to the 11 that the 88%, if you were to use that same number, that did a negative, those are the ones that won. And it's, the positive campaigns don't win races.
All right, let's talk about some local issues. The most highly watched race on the Suncoast, the race for Congress in the 16th Congressional District. We had the big debate this week here at the Trapezoid between Congressman Vern Buchanan and Democrat David Shapiro. There's been a lot of things happening in that race over the last couple of weeks. Kevin, I'm going to start with you. It seems like Mr. Shapiro is in the more difficult spot, down in the public polls. How would you describe his debate performance, and where you go from here?
What's important is David is our leader in our community because he's our congressional candidate, and his field team is tremendous. When we have canvasses, his field team is leading, and some of the state house races are showing up. And we are getting 50, 75, 100 people knocking on our doors. So the field team is awesome. Raising money to run against a guy like Vern Buchanan, who just put $250,000 of his own money and is obviously worth millions and millions of dollars, is a hard thing to do. David has raised $2 million, but there's more money to be raised because you have to reach all these voters. It's just you got to cut through all the different commercials. So there's a lot of work to be done. I think with relation to the debate this week, David really took the high road, was very substantive. I thought it was poignant when I read in the article in the Herald Tribune the next day that Congressman Buchanan didn't like being held to account and talk about a lack of civility, called it a game. You want to play the game, let's play the game. I mean, that kind of rhetoric doesn't play well when you're the congressman. You're to be held to the standard of being a statesman, and I didn't think it was very statesmanlike. And by the way, he's being held account for passing a tax plan that benefited him personally.
Jack.
It benefited everybody, number one.
It's not
number
benefiting
two,
everybody.
Number two, when you add what the DCCC has put into that race, they've each got $4 million. Number three, I was actually totally surprised how ill-prepared David Shapiro was to show up for a debate to talk about issues. For a trial lawyer who speaks to juries to try and convince them all in his career, he did not show up. If that's the best he can do, he does not deserve to be our congressman. Number three or number four, Larry Sabato, just in his crystal ball, put Vern's race back to likely to win. And if you look at the early voting and the absentee ballots in District 17, CD District 17, Republicans are up in early voting by 10,000, and they're up in vote by mail by 6,500.
So the
voters are showing, and not just in Sarasota, but Manatee and Hillsborough, that they're coming out to vote for Vern.
Is there a disconnect by what many Democrats perceive was that the Democratic base is energized this year, and what you're seeing in terms of early vote numbers, and whether it's in the 16th Congressional District or elsewhere?
We're going to see on November 6th, but no. I mean, our people are coming to the polls. If you look at those numbers, by percentage of party, the Democrats are outperforming the Republicans by 4% in Sarasota. There's almost 30% of Democrats have already voted, where it's more like 26. Of course, there's more registered Republicans. So that's why you get that larger margin. The Democrats are coming to vote.
Oh, okay, so riddle me this when we talk about the governor's race, because Andrew Gillum continues to lead the polls anywhere from a couple of points to a couple of more points than that. But statewide, Jack, similar numbers, it looks like more Republicans are voting early. Is there a disconnect there?
No, I think that there's been a number of things that have happened over the last several weeks, and as the campaign's been going on, I'm going to go back to Brett Kavanaugh's. That whole fiasco certainly generated interest from the base. I think you also are starting to see on the governor's race, you know, everyone's talking about Gillum's FBI investigation. Nobody's talking about the fact that the Federal Elections Commission is investigating him. And when you look at what happened this week, where obviously on one of the reimbursements of the trips, his name was crossed off, said hold for later.
So why is he still leading in the polls?
Well, depending on which poll. You know, we're seeing.
I have not seen a poll that shows that Ron DeSantis is leading this race.
I've seen a couple where everything's within the margin of error, but you've got to look at the momentum of anything with the last week. And if you look at the number of voters coming out that are Republicans, especially in South County, they are absolutely tearing it up. The voters are coming out to support Republicans in South County.
Alan, the Republicans are frustrated because their October surprise against Andrew Gillum, which they thought was going to work, hasn't worked. Andrew Gillum is energizing people who don't typically vote in these off-year elections. He's going to be in town tomorrow here in Sarasota, and you are going to see a huge turnout. And those people aren't just going to turn out to vote, but they're going to turn out to contact other voters to vote. He's energized the base, and it's going to be an exciting November 6th, right. But our people are coming to vote.
So quick final thoughts here. Where are we at? Just a couple of days, more than a week away from this election. I know, Jack, that you feel confident about most of your races, maybe with the exception of House 72, Margaret Good against Ray Pilon.
Well, and I look at even if these numbers continue, and each day they keep getting larger. You know, we're up 6,000 in early voting. We're up 1,000 in absentee ballot returns, which is amazing. That gives us real hope that Ray will have an opportunity to be elected. But I think you're going to see a very solid Republican victory for all levels of races.
And Kevin, you get the last word.
I think down the ballot, the Democrats are going to outperform, especially at the county commission level as well as the House seats. I could see Tony Mowry, Tracy Pratt, Liv Coleman, and Margaret Good all doing very well on election
day. But they can do better than the others have passed, but if they don't win, it doesn't
matter.
matter.
You're right. Politics is binary, so they're going to win.
They're not.
All right. Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much. We want to thank Jack Brill, Vice Chair of the Sarasota Republican Party, and Kevin Griffith, the Vice Chair of the Sarasota Democratic Party, for joining us tonight.